Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the December meeting, Taupō District Council, here in the chambers in the CBD in Taupō, New Zealand today. Welcome to members of the international audience and domestic audience around New Zealand. They're all hooked up, are we? Yeah, cool. And recording. Thank you very much. I'd just like to call on Councillor Park to do the cover care for this afternoon, please.
Tuia ki te mauri o te wharewa, tuia ki te mana o te tangata, tuia ki te puna, te aroha, te puke, te eke, te taumata, tuia tāna ki
Indeed, good afternoon to members of the public, staff, and members of the press. Good to see Nephew here this afternoon and Deputy Mayor and Councillors. We'll get straight into it. Item number 2, apology. We had from Councillor Whittington and Councillor Greenslade. And Karen, welcome. Kia ora. Nice to see you, Karen, on Zoom. Lovely to have you on board. Could I have a mover for those apologies? Thank you, Councillor Park, seconded by Councillor Lachlan. All those in favour, please say aye. Yes. Carried. Item 3, is there any conflicts of interest came to the items today from any of the members? No? Okay, we'll move on. There's a confirmation of the minutes that were for the ordinary council meeting that was held on the 28th of November. Any matters arising from those minutes or points of clarification of those minutes? No, could I have a movement? Thank you, Councillor Shepherd, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Right, 5.1, adoption of the annual report 2022-23. We have, is it Jeanette? Pardon? Good afternoon, ladies.
Tēnā koutou, Mayor and Councillors. I will take the report as read. It's been a long journey, but we've got there. You were circulated a copy of the annual report with the agenda. There's just been a few changes since then, so I'll just quickly run through those, but I can say that there was no financial impact on the result. It was more wording and just fixing up a few issues with the prior year numbers or comparative numbers. So just running quickly through, the page numbers I'm referring to are the page numbers of the annual report, not the agenda, which I think they're about 2 out. The rates increases affordability graph on page 15, we had the labels of the graph the wrong way around, so that's been corrected. In the service performance reporting section on page 24-25, we have expanded on the assumptions and judgments around the setting and measuring of performance and the methods used. Groups of activities, page 26, we've removed the reason for non-achievement related to the water and wastewater response times, and we've amended the number of performance measures achieved for last financial year to 50. That was 45. That also affects page 7 of the summary. Community services on page 35, we've noted that a measure was incorrectly reported last year around the evaluation of the annual CD exercise. It should be 53%, not 100%. All the funding impact statements in that front section, so there's one for every activity. The comparatives for the 2022 and 2023 long-term plan have been restated to match the long-term plan. There's no change to overall totals, just a classification of where the money sat. Page 91, the whole of council funding statement, there was an adding error which we've corrected in the comparatives. In the financials, and this goes across about 6 pages, it's one change, but it affected 6 things. A council property was incorrectly classified as an investment property, and we moved it back to property, plant and equipment due to extended settlement date. So those, there were 4 notes affected, which were on pages 95, 120, 125, 20, 127, 135 and 158. Page 124, we also added a new disclosure for the judgment on the sale of the site for the new building. Page 149, we modified the note 31, which is events after balance date, in light of the change of government in relation to the water services reform, and that also affected page 25 of the summary. And also on page 25 of the summary, we added a note regarding the legislative compliance regarding the adoption of the full annual report to this, and that's on the summary. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Question. Thank you for that clarification.
I can also add through the chair that the annual report was presented to the Risk and Assurance meeting yesterday, and the Risk and Assurance Committee have recommended that the annual report be adopted.
Very good. Any? Yes, looks like I've got a lot of thank you very much. By Councillor Chairman. The report 1 term 3 there. Recommendations be accepted. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried.
Thank you.
5.2, Mangakino basketball court.
Coming to take.
Good afternoon. Dave, it is nice to see you. It is Andrew.
Not nice to see you.
Not nice to see you.
That's right. I've been like this all day.
How's that?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, good afternoon, everybody. The agenda item in front of you, following a meeting at the Mangakino-Pouakani representative group, I was asked to go away and prepare some true costs to build the basketball court in Mangakino from the resolution. So I'm here today to request some unbudgeted capex of $72,066 to build the court in Mangakino Town Centre. It's a full court, and it's fenced, and I did go away looking for some acoustic resolution, because obviously we're neighbouring the pensioners and we've got other neighbours there. From a fencing aspect with acoustics, it's for outside, it's just not there. It's not a thing. But what I have sourced in this proposal here is a one-stop shop, one company called Court King can do it for us. And the product that they're going to line the court with has got acoustic qualities to it. So when the ball bounces on it, it doesn't affect the bounce of the ball or anything like that. But what it does do is soften that noise for neighbours. So it's not going to be as if it was on full concrete, a real noise issue. No, there's lots of colours. This is just a sample that the rep gave me. We can pretty much come up with any colour design that we so wish for the court. So I guess that's the next step. Should this budget be approved, then we'll go away and get a concept plan of what the court will actually look like and go back to the community with that. I don't think it will be that colour. We'll put that colour to the bottom.
Okay, any questions of you or Andrew regarding this being a subject of conversation for many months or years? Councillor Park?
Yeah, firstly a question, then a comment. Julie, will there be some work done with perhaps Bryn? I'm sorry if I've mispronounced her name, from who's our funding lady, just to see if there's access to any community funds that might assist in the state. Briar. I beg your pardon, Briar. Apologies. I haven't explored that at this stage, but I can certainly ask questions. Yeah, for sure. Excellent. And I'd just like to add that this project has been around for a very long time. Mangakino are a wonderful community that don't ask for a lot, and I think this is the least we can do for them to involve them in district-wide well-being. So definitely in support.
Yeah, but Councillor Campbell.
Also, just to confirm, this is a full court.
It is.
So is it a international standard just in terms of dimensions.
Yes, I believe I've requested a full court, and that's what I've been quoted on.
The height, though, 'cause, is it going to be with NBA regulation? Because it's quite high. It's pretty. What I'm suggesting is, I think those adjustable height things, the setups, where younger kids can also work it just as well as the tall kids. Is that something that's...
So I can answer that. So this is what we're proposing is a standard New Zealand height basketball hoop. We'll work through the details of whether adjustable hoops or not are applicable with the Mangakino rep group. The purpose of this paper is really to talk about the budget and whether council wants to assign budget rather than specific details, such as the construction of the hoops.
No, I'm just saying, I imagine an adjustable setup would be more expensive than set piece whole. Yeah. It's quite high in a regulation standard.
Councillor Park.
Councillor Park, this has been bouncing around for quite a while. I'm happy to move, get the court sorted. So I'm happy to move the recommendation. And it's
You want to get the ball rolling?
Let's clean up this thing.
And we were second that like Mangakino is a beautiful area, and there's got a shop that upgrade there of that CBD area, and I encourage anyone to visit the public for it. Anyone's going to visit Mangakino, it's a wonderful, wonderful area. So more than happy, Councillor Chairman, to support this recommendation. You can thank you for your efforts on this because you've taken to the report. Let's forget that project needs to be finished. It has been moved and seconded by Councillor Taylor and Councillor Loughlin. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Yeah. Thank you. Right. Thank you. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Andrew. 5.3, Taupō Sculpture Trust. The concept update. Hello, Lisa.
Hello.
Tessa, Ron,
And Andrew.
Good afternoon. Okay.
Good afternoon. Kia ora koutou katoa. This is my first time presenting, sorry. First time presenting, if that's not obvious. So for those of you I haven't met, I'm Tessa and I'm in the project management team. I'll take the report as read, but I'll just do a quick summary of some of the main points. So the purpose of this report is to update you all on the establishment of the sculpture trail at Riverside Park. The Sculpture Trust presented the proposal to the council during a workshop held on February 7th of this year. Council officers went away and investigated the possibility of creating a sculpture trail within the park. And we have established that the development of any sculptures over 8 metres in height at Riverside Park would require a resource consent under the Taupō District Plan. This is down to the zoning of the site, which anticipates retail development and not public art. This consent is an umbrella consent, meaning that it will cover all sculptures and resource consents will not be required for each individual sculpture. We have received resource consent, and this was approved on the 29th of November. Do I have any questions?
Good.
Yeah, kia ora koutou. Thank you, Your Worship, councillors. I'll take my report, which is attached as read, but I will note one change or one, further news, in respect to a statement that says that iwi approach a comment, no response has been received. So subsequent, we have received a response from Te Kotairanga or Ngāti Tūwharetoa in respect that who would like to be involved in the process on an ongoing basis and didn't have any concerns identified with the concept of the sculpture being identified. So that fed into the resource consent process, which Tessa alluded to just now.
Nothing to add, but happy to take questions if the members have.
So at this stage, the trail is a proposal. And I guess concern that I have is around affordability with rates that we're under quite a lot of pressure now. And I just want to make sure that, as we go through this process, that I don't want to create unnecessary, unintended sorry, I'm explaining myself well. Just a situation where people just assume that we're going to be doing all these funding, all these extra sculptures and everything else. And that one's quite difficult because we're at quite an early stage. I just want to note that. Because we've had quite a lot of discussion around the boom boom sculpture and a whole lot of expectations in terms of the trust in the wider community. And I just don't want to create any unnecessary or send the wrong signals, I guess, that we might be able to fund these on a regular basis or anything like that. So that was just my comment. I mean, at this stage, we're just receiving an updated report, but I just wanted to share that.
Well, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rankin,
I was under the understanding that we gave them money every year, but we didn't actually have any, apart from proven, any involvement in proven art because we are not. We've all got different ideas, and we give them the money and they will decide. And I see here that every sculpture is going to be approved by council. I don't think that's necessary. I'm sorry. If it's a great big piece, then yes, but I can't see why we have to change from what we used to do.
So I might speak to that. So, Councillor, the paper merely summarises what's in the MOU, and rather than speaking to the practice, speaks to what's written in the MOU. Again, I'd just reiterate that today's agenda isn't about specific sculptures or around the sculpture trail. And to Councillor Loughman's comment, this paper doesn't commit council to any specific action or expense. It's merely an update on the progress of the first step, which was establishment of a sculpture trail and the resource consent for it. So
it's not comment.
That's a reflection of the current wording of the MOU signed between council and the Sculpture Trust, but council can choose to either operate or not operate under that arrangement in the future. That's outside of the context of today's paper in any case.
To be contestable, but it is not money that is set aside for total sculpture trust on an annual basis. I really appreciate Rome's great respect for the business. I was quite surprised to see how advanced we were in the space, given it was a workshop conversation about the sculpture trail. I was alluded to a media article about this through someone who went, how can this be happening when the cost of living is so high and I don't want my rates being spent in this way? You need to stick to your knitting. So along the lines of Councillor Loughman, very happy to receive the report, but we have a long-term plan process to go into, and we've got some very hefty decisions to be made when we look at the bigger rate increase.
Cool. Any other questions? Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, just a comment, Your Worship, just following up with Councillor Rankin about the MOU that council table has approval of the final art pieces. I think that you're talking about. No, just comment, I know we're not talking about that today, but yeah, I can imagine certain art pieces being chosen for artistic reasons, but perhaps being culturally or religiously offensive to some, so that I don't necessarily think this table having a final say is such a bad thing.
Anyone else? No, well, thank you. I think it's an excellent idea, to sculpture gallery and the park that's used quite a bit, but probably not as much as it should be. And I think this will add another section to that particular area, and people will make their destination. So, I think you're right. Thomas and Esther
Thank you.
and Rick. So we will look forward to further presentations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to just add one comment before you move the motion, just to acknowledge the work that Tessa and Fraser and many people in the team have done to work with the Sculpture Trust, with the support of Rowan and others. So just wanted to acknowledge that work, and it's great to have them give you all an update, because it's a lot of the effort and they don't often get to see the end result of it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Receive the information. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carry. Thank you, Dean. Right, 5.4, addressing short-term home-based accommodations. Good afternoon, Nick. Welcome.
Afternoon, Your Worship and Councils.
Oh, yeah. Well, I worked out that if I was only ever going to wear it for weddings and job interviews, it'd look really good in about 10 years' time. So I need to get some use out of it. Look, the paper you have in front of you is really pulling together a number of conversations which you've had with officers over probably a couple of years. And I was really conscious that a number of those were kind of left unfinished. So I've asked Andrew and the team to pull this paper together, really to consolidate where we're sitting as officers, and I guess to get some direction from you as we move into probably two key pieces of work. You'll be really conscious that we're underway with the long-term plan, and consideration of our rating policies is an important part of that. We're also progressing the residential section of the district plan in terms of a review, and consideration of short-term accommodation as part of that is an important piece of that puzzle as well. So we felt it was timely to have this conversation. But I'll hand it over to Andrew, who'll give you a quick summary of the overall report.
Thank you, Nick. So I'll take the report as read, councillors. It's a long report, as I'm sure you're aware, and it covers off three major issues that have come through as sort of themes from our community and from yourselves. That's including the issue around nuisance effects, so things like noise, alcohol control challenges, that kind of thing, vehicle movements, parking in the incorrect places. Those effects primarily are addressed through existing mechanisms that council already has. We have a traffic control bylaw, for example. We have alcohol control bylaw. We also have district plan provisions which affect noise and vehicle movements. So these nuisance behaviours are already controlled by council, and they're already addressed. We have various reporting mechanisms for people to make a complaint, and it goes through that council service request system, and then either council enforcement officers, compliance officers, or a contractor goes out there and says, hey guys, can you move your vehicle? Can you issues a noise reduction notice, for example, in conjunction with the police. The second issue that, I'll skip to the last issue, the fire safety issue that's addressed in the paper. That issue was raised that there was concerns around the number of people that might be at a property at a given time. That issue's somewhat complex insofar as that landlords and council are relatively limited in the way we can regulate or restrict the number of people at a property at a given time, if it's not a public bar or nightclub, that kind of situation, public space. On private property, almost unlimited number of people can be there. However, that's not to say that an unlimited number of people can stay there. And that's where the fire safety rules under the Building Act and under the Building Code come in. And they would change the risk group that someone's property might sit in if they exceed five or more persons staying there on a short-term basis, paying for that accommodation. And if short-term accommodation providers are doing that, then they may have actually changed the use of their building, which they're actually required by law to inform council of. And when they do that, there would need to be an assessment to determine what systems they may need to address the fire safety hazards. of having those 5 or more people at the property. That includes things like sprinklers, fire warning systems, fire doors, better access, those kinds of things to ensure that people can get out of the building safely. That part of the legislation is while robust in terms of what the rules are, it relies on individuals actually knowing what their legal obligations are. And for that reason, we're recommending that council place basically an information page on our website that informs landlords and property owners of their obligations and makes it really clear that, hey, you might need to get an assessment to check whether or not you've constituted a change of use. And then perhaps to the most pressing matter, or the most hotly discussed topic, is the rating issue. We've got Tony, I think, in the room here, so she can correct me if I get anything wrong. But in regards to rates, there's really an issue of identification. Fundamentally, in terms of the way rating systems work, you need to be able to identify who is using what, how often they're using it, and what pressure are they placing on council services. The issue with the Airbnbs or short-term accommodation providers overall is that it's very difficult for us to, first of all, determine who and where they are. You can look on Airbnb, for example, and see a picture of the house, but the website's not, the actual address is not disclosed. So without making a booking and paying your booking fee, you don't know what that address is. So you can't easily allocate a rating proportion to, or some proportion of rates, whether that's through targeted or through a rating differential. The other issue we have then is, as well, coming from that, is determining extent of use. We might be able to find out that Joe Bloggs on Arrowsmith is renting out a property for, at some point, it's been advertised on Airbnb, but we have no idea how often that's occurring, which then limits our ability to determine which council services is that property actually placing more pressure on relative to a property of the same capital value. And I think that's quite an important point, is that the differentials are focused around relativity between property types. So when we have a standard residential property, it's capital value rated, and that is based on assumptions around what the average usage of council services are. And then also there are also kind of their ability to pay based on their capital value. I'm happy to take any other questions on this.
Thank you. Points. That's a Westman.
I suppose this is something that's been on my work for a number of years, and I truly appreciated the amount of work that's gone into that report, because it's covered off a number of issues that were burning issues for people coming into my office and complaining about holiday homes next door and noise and everything like that. But also on the other flip side of that, the rating side of it, had investigated some of the other towns in the district throughout New Zealand and what they were doing. And I suppose it came to a head earlier in the year when we all realised that that was very difficult to actually say, hey, that system works really well. Obviously, we had its own issues. So thank you for really taking the time and investigating all of that for me particularly, because something I was quite passionate about, and definitely have a better understanding of it, and totally support the recommendation that you put in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Westman. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And yes, I agree. Read the report, wide ranging, and I accept, apart from one issue I've raised now, content of it. Inequity is one of the issues that have been raised with us, and that's a really difficult issue to grapple with. And I appreciate that you've gone in a number of different lanes and looking at that, and I agree with the conclusions. The one concern I do have, however, is around the fire safety standards. So I'm uncomfortable with leaving it at self-reporting. So I know we get complaints, because I've fielded a number of them from people who have properties next door to them that are constantly, in fact, almost exclusively used for a short-term rental, and there are large groups. My concern is, knowing how robust the fire safety standards are, and we become aware that they are actively and regularly breaching those standards. So you can't then unknow that because beyond records, and we do nothing about it, and there is a fire, and the consequences flow from that. I'm uncomfortable not doing anything about that. So I agree with the recommendations on the paper, with one concern around should we, on the basis of regular complaints or information that is robust enough to act on, do something about it. Because we turn a blind eye, I wonder whether we become complicit in that should a tragedy occur.
Through the chair, so the council has I believe its council has the ability to prosecute individuals who are breaching those standards and are not reporting that they have had a change of use. On that basis, council can, in fact, follow that up. And if we had sufficient evidence, then you could reasonably expect to get a result out of that process.
Great, thanks. That was the answer I was hoping for, so I didn't ask you this beforehand. So what I'd like to see then in the recommendation is that we have that reflected in the agenda item we've got in the recommendations that we approve. So at the moment it's just, this is too hard. Our primary focus will be advocacy, because I accept it is a national problem. If we're not alone in this, every other holiday resort suffers the same thing. But I would like to see us being a little more proactive, or at least respond actively, not passively, to those kind of reports. So rather than going, yeah, it's too hard, yeah, thank you for information, and wait for the next complaint to come in. So if we could have that changed if everyone agrees, that would be my recommendation to reflect what you've just said to us. Thanks, Ian.
Nice. Thanks for these solutions. Just the Nation 5, which is that the application to central government. I just did want to highlight that LGNZ is actually at that point up already. So in the work that they're doing around the future for local government, it includes a specific reference to this. That's been raised already through that.
Councillor Park.
Yeah, just through the chair, in support of our deputy mayor, I completely agree. I just wonder, as an advocate, perhaps a letter to things about our concerns and just to carry the message through rather than just stop it here with a change in the recommendations. As an advocate from behalf of our residential.
Do that, make a note of that. Deputy Mayor, you intend to insert this.
We have the recommendation up. It's on item 4, recommendations. If we just beef that up, it says we're going part way to addressing and placing information on our website, clearly informed property owners of their legal obligations. But those who actively choose to disregard that, we'll need to take appropriate, I would say prosecute, I just have something along the lines that we would take appropriate action, as the circumstances dictate.
Through the chair, I believe it would be our building consents team or our building compliance team that would be looking to follow up that work that sort of sits in their wheelhouse. I'm not sure what their capacity looks like to actively go after that. That's a question for that team, so I can't answer that specifically for you, but
yes. Hi. Please.
Well, we actively monitor these sorts of situations quite regularly. We have a building compliance officer that's dedicated to this kind of thing within the district, so we absolutely have capacity for that. But I don't know how Janie wants to create the words around this.
So the words up here, it's Councillor Taylor, particularly in regard to fire safety standards.
Put my wordsmithing hat on for this.
Councillor Campbell, did you have?
Oh, no, it's not to do with that. I'd like to jump to
clear this one up first.
Yeah, there's also something using the word breaches of obligations. Okay, and also continues to
Yeah, as that reads, that's fine. Yeah. But what I'm not seeking is to add an enormous amount of additional work for the compliance team. But equally, if we become aware of stuff, I just don't believe in a position where we should just turn a blind eye and walk away.
Just through the just stepping a number of, as we know that we've transitioned from a number of our accommodation providers having NSD emergency housing back to being motel accommodation, and there's been a number of motels that we've dealt with recently who have been considering that longer term tenanted accommodation as opposed to just going back to motel accommodation. So it is something that we're very aware of within the district and are actively looking at.
Right, thanks, Chief. Councillor Campbell.
Yes, just to clarify, the bed tax, so-called, falls within this discussion. Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering, because of course this district has a lot of the stuff going on. Okay, the LGNZ might be doing something. It is a national question to make something like that happen. But it seems like this district has quite a lot more at stake than a lot of other districts. And so are we doing some sort of specific petition to Parliament, the new minister of what? Who's the minister? Who's the new minister who does this?
Government.
So Council, I think it's covered 5, which is that continue to advocate council on council. So that's been basically in that presentation. And for in terms of this issue. So I guess I was highlighting on top of that recommendation that our committee was supposed to pick up the issue. So it's nationally already.
Through the chair, if there's any question around the actual so-called bed tax or rating approaches, the issue is obviously with the identification problem, which is what Auckland ran into, and it cost them approximately $1.7 million in legal fees to get their targeted rate eventually across the line, because they lacked that robust basis on which to make that rate. And then since then, they've dealt with a significant amount of non-compliance. Their ballpark is around 25% non-compliance with that rating approach. So having a national register or a national database would make that very difficult for individuals to not, well, basically be dishonest. So they've got their targeted accommodation rate is now in place, but they have significant non-compliance with that rate, or estimated non-compliance. To be clear, they don't know what the extent of non-compliance is. They did a very basic calculation of looking at all the properties they could see that were advertised at least once, and then subtracting the number of people that openly registered and paid their fee. Basically, really simple maths on here's all the people that are there, and we're only getting this many people actually paying. That didn't count anything where people are, talking individually and doing an arrangement or advertising on through alternative mechanisms. It was just purely basically an Airbnb minus the people that are already paying.
Thank you for looking at all the options we asked you to look at. I am disappointed we didn't find a way to bring some quality to the other accommodation providers, but I do appreciate the work, and I'm happy with the recommendations, and I look forward to LGNZ's feedback because it is a legislation question. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you, Angela. I think that wraps it up. And it's good. Thank you for bringing papers to finalise this. Know where we're going, that's happening in the fire, the most important thing. That is the national response coming out of this, and certainly that's what legal fees. So very good. Did I have to move it? No. Okay.
I'm happy to move Debbie.
Thank you, Councillor Park, and Councillor Rankin. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Thank you, gentlemen. Right, moving on, we have 5.5, health, safety and wellbeing for the update. Louise?
Yeah.
Good. Louise and Michelle, nice to see you. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Just a quick overview of the report. Obviously, with the new business excellence group that Louise heads, you know, a lot of the focus has been on an improvement plan and has pretty much been my priority in the health and safety, which I've outlined in the report. So I'll take it as read. And has anyone got any particular questions or queries that they'd like to raise with me?
Thank you, Michelle. Please.
No, nothing at this stage, just other than what Michelle's already outlined in terms of we've got quite an aggressive improvement program, which we detailed and discussed yesterday at Risk and Assurance. So they're keeping quite a watching brief in terms of progress being made against that. We're taking it really seriously. It's tied into people's performance agreements. Yeah, and it's really around taking the outputs of the KPMG review of our work, which happened in August of this year, and trying to systemize a little bit more our health and safety approaches. And there'll be an element of cultural shift that we're trying to drive through Julie's leadership and further training, which will be rolling out to the organisation in the first half of next year. So, yeah, watch this space. We're moving as quickly as we can. And in the meantime, we're continuing with business as usual. Michelle's doing the usual work in terms of working across the business to make sure that we've got the right details in our lease agreements, for example, working with the business to capture things on our health and safety system that records things, Vault/Dempstra, and then dealing with responding to incidents as they arise. So I think of note, there is a couple of instances there that were reportable or notifiable, one which talks a little bit around our exposure on some of our reserves. So I'm not sure if you've read that, but we do have some ongoing work to do there to try and make sure that we're using the degree of our control and influence to mitigate such trip hazards as much as we practically can. So, yeah.
Thank you, Louise.
I just note the conference, which I think is fantastic you guys are going to. I just wondered if in the future, if we could just get a copy of the agenda, just as governance, to have an idea of what current discussions are, current topics of interest, if that makes sense. So it's not saying that we want to, I would like a full report, but sometimes we're not privy to the learning that is taking place, and then it might just give us some interesting questions too.
That's a great idea. And since writing this report, I've attended 2 other conferences and around mentally healthy work, which is a big key focus in New Zealand for organisations, and WorkSafer worked in consultation with some guidelines around that. So, and I am in the process of just writing a report to the executive team on the outcomes and learnings from these conferences, and happy to share that too with as a governance level. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, across other councils, you know, I'm part of the BOPLAS group as well and attend the YLAS as well. You know, the issues that we're having as a council, we're not alone. You know, it's very generic across councils in New Zealand. So we've got a lot of collaboration working in that space, and the conferences are very much pitched at the current themes.
Christmas.
Thank you.
Thanks to you. report be accepted. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much.
Well, have a lovely Christmas, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to the next one. That's the end of the public part of the meeting. So we'll now move into the conference, go over the meeting, you go back to the for Councillor Shepherd. All those in favour, please say aye. Yes. Carried. Couple minutes while we